Relax and listen to the voice.
Hello everyone. It's been quite some time, but we would like to welcome you back to Alien and UFO Encounters, this being Volume 3. In this volume, we're going to discuss a myriad of UFO sightings and alleged abduction occurrences. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy these stories. Alright, here we go. In southeastern Siberia, one could find Lake Baikal. This lake has scientifically been proven to be the planet's oldest and deepest lake. According to the fact sheets, roughly 1/4 of all of Earth's fresh water is contained within Lake Baikal. And in a lake that deep, we can be sure to find something strange. For centuries, Lake Baikal has had plenty of documented unexplained phenomena. Local residents describe many multiple UFO encounters that they say frequently occur within this remote region of Russia. Some of the locals believe that there's a secret military base or some kind of extraterrestrial encampment lurking underneath this beautiful scenery. In 1982, during a routine Soviet military training dive taking place within Lake Baikal, members of the Russian Navy claimed to have noticed anomalous figures swimming around them nearby. According to statements given by several of the soldiers, these creatures were humanoid and did not appear to have any sort of modern diving equipment. The creatures were described as wearing tight-fitting metallic suits that were complete with a helmet-like apparatus which completely covered their heads. Whether they had come to an agreement after conversing about this, or each truly individually felt this way, many of the divers' statements claimed that these creatures were estimated to be roughly 10 feet tall. After this period, once the creatures had approached and both parties observed each other, keeping their distance, the alien dwellers simply disappeared back into the darkness of the water. Once the divers had re-emerged from the depth and relayed their encounter to their higher-ups, one intrigued commander gave orders to the crew to return to the water and capture one of these creatures. 7 of the men prepared their suits and returned into the water to begin their mission. After descending deep into the lake, the divers claim that once again, multiple entities emerged. One of the divers attempted to catch one of these creatures with a large net. The divers later claimed that after this attempt, their entire mission became disastrous. According to the divers, the non-human entities clearly took a defensive position and began to fight back by shooting intense sonar-style waves at the divers. The men claim that this powerful attack rendered every single one of them unconscious, while also pushing them rapidly back up towards the surface. For those that are uninitiated in diving, after making deep dives, divers must return to the surface slowly to avoid results from the devastating effects of changes in pressure. If a diver does not return to the surface at a slow enough pace and is not placed into a decompression chamber, they are often subjected to a condition referred to as the bends. 3 of the divers in this squadron were seriously injured during this attack and the rapid return to the surface, but did not succumb to the affliction. The remaining divers happened to be in bad shape and needed to be immediately transferred into a decompression chamber. Rather unfortunately, there was only one chamber in the region, and it was only designed for 2 people at a time. With no other options remaining, 4 men were placed into the chamber simultaneously in an attempt to save their lives. This decision, though made out of necessity, proved to be disastrous. 3 of the men perished, and those who survived were left with lifelong, life-altering disabilities. Following the reports of this catastrophic event, the KGB directed agents to cease any further attempts of making contact with the USO, or Unidentified Submerged Object. For many decades, the events and the details which transpired remain hidden and top secret by high-ranking officials. Former Soviet naval officer and ufologist Vladimir Zaza claims that the Russian government has recently released these declassified files. In these documents, the Baikal creatures are described in great detail. This includes some different interpretations of the coloration of the uniforms or skin that was seen on these creatures, as well as some accounts that the creatures' heads were dome-shaped and that they had big eyes. The reports go into a little more detail about the creatures being observed swimming without any apparent oxygen tanks or life support equipment. These reports also play their part in casting doubt on what these divers claim to have seen. Some doubt is cast by referencing folklore in the area, in which old local tales had mentioned creatures that appeared to look like pharaohs and were humanoid but had paws and fishtails being seen rising from the water. Some researchers cast doubt upon this sighting as well by claiming that the vision of the divers might have been impaired, or that they had misinterpreted natural phenomena such as light reflecting off of ice. Others attribute this alleged encounter as a simple misunderstanding about some of the local wildlife in the area. There is one such creature known as the Baikal giant amphipod, which is described as alien-looking, and yet another creature known as the Baikal seal. The documents also state that the Russian Navy had been extensively monitoring multiple underwater vehicles that were alleged to have been navigating inside of the lake. If you're interested in this story, please do a little bit of digging, entertain yourself, and check it out. This may or may not be true, but the story of this 1982 encounter is often looked upon as a piece of strange fiction and mystery rather than any sort of scientifically factual information. Acapulco Alien Abduction. The story of Armando Zurbarán. According to this story, it was January in 1954. Armando Zurbarán was driving a treacherous stretch of mountain roads between Mexico City and Acapulco late in the night and hoping to arrive in the coastal area in the early morning to meet up with a business partner. Today, currently, this same stretch of roads, the roadway between Mexico City and Acapulco, is modern and easily traveled, taking less than 2 hours to make it from one place to the other. However, in 1954, traveling this road, this risky and dangerous mountain road, took roughly 6 hours. According to Armando, at roughly 2 a.m. in the morning during his drive, he claims to have felt a hypnotic state of lethargy, which caused worry in him that he took seriously, and then decided to pull his car over to the side of the road. Armando claims that he rubbed his eyes and shook his head, yawned, got out of his car and stretched, and did everything he could to try and wake himself up. At some point, Armando claims that he realized he was opening his eyes from having them closed for a prolonged period of time, and states that he saw, in the middle of the road, a large, luminescent metallic disc which had several strange-looking humanoid individuals standing on both sides of the object. Armando described these figures as being tall and wearing outfits that appeared to be like overalls or some type of uniform that he related to being worn for work. He claims that these outfits were offset by a large belt being cinched tightly in the middle. After observing these figures for a short amount of time, Armando claims that he felt compelled to exit his car and walk towards the large metal disc in these figures, almost as if he were in a trance. He claims that as the distance grew shorter between himself, the craft, and these figures, he became able to get a better look at them. He became able to obtain a better look at everything. Armando comments on the figures. In addition to making comments on their bizarre clothing, Armando described these figures as seemingly male, with long, straight blonde hair, very light-colored eyes, and strangely feminine, angelic facial features. This description from Armando has come up many times in UFO and alien sighting reports throughout Mexico, and these specific beings are referred to as the Nordics due to their apparent similarities to Nordic people. Armando claims that he stood there, looking at these men for some time before they came to him and escorted him inside of the ship. Armando describes feeling and hearing a buzzing sound as he made his way onto the saucer. Once inside, Armando recalls turning to the figure that seemed to be in charge and asking, "Why have I been chosen for this honor?" To Armando's surprise, the being that he had spoken to looked directly at him and responded to him in flawless, fluent Spanish and told him, "You are neither the first nor last Earthman to be chosen for testing. Our task, slow though it may seem, is designed to persuade. We choose the likeliest, most malleable persons for contact so that they might better transmit our messages." Armando states that he could not figure out what kind of messages this being was talking about, but shortly after that, the beings began to show him a series of images from his own life. Armando states that this was like a dream, but the images were being broadcast on the walls of the ship. Armando recalls thinking at one point that these creatures had either been scanning his brain or that they had been monitoring him since early childhood. After these images had stopped being shown to Armando, he claims that he was informed that the ship that he was currently on was no longer on Earth and no longer even in the same solar system. This confused Armando, as he didn't feel like the ship had moved at all. And when he inquired about how this could be, the figures claimed that there was a gravitational repulsion system that was in use. They allegedly allowed Armando to see where they were at currently, and Armando reports seeing only gray fog and darkness. The beings then asked and offered Armando to be shown their home planet, to which he answered that he would not like to do that and would prefer to be returned home. Instead of returning back to Earth or traveling to their home planet, Armando states that it seemed as if they spent days traveling within this ship. One of the strange occurrences about this story is that even after many years and multiple retellings of the story, Armando seems to very vividly remember a lot of the details of this event and continuously relays them with very minimal difference or error. In one report, he describes what would be a bathroom and shower area. In his own words, he states, "I shall never be able to forget it. The bathroom was a new and unimaginable experience for me. As I stood upright, facing an angle of the wall that was filled with tiny holes, I was covered in warm air, and as the air grew stronger, it became transformed into damp air and seemed to impregnate my skin like a warm, wet breeze. Once I had become completely drenched, I was offered some sort of what seemed to be liquid soap, which I then rubbed all over myself from head to toe. Standing there once more before these warm air sprinklers, I felt the soap begin to evaporate and felt my skin becoming completely clean. Then the air became dry, and then it became cooler until it was pleasantly cool. During all these days while traveling, Armando states that he was also fed and sat at the same table with these creatures. He describes their food as being very similar to the foods on Earth, stating that there was meat, vegetables, cheese, and butter. He states that the aliens drank a liquid that appeared to be similar to milk, and they explained to Armando that it was the main food source on their home planet. As the days on the ship passed by, Armando also talked with these Nordic creatures about their civilization. He claims to have learned that these creatures had been alive for at least 250 human years, and that in their society everyone is equal, and that they lived their lives being subject to the laws of a specific religion. At the center of their religion, there was a creator who had ruled over them for at least 3,000 years, and who they called the Master. Another name that they called their deity was the beloved number 9, and apparently a favorite number among their species was the number 9. After a few more days, these beings told Armando that their time together had come to an end, and Armando states that he was then returned to the roadway where his car was left parked. After returning to his car and watching this vessel fly away, Armando states that though he swears he had spent a number of days on board of this alien ship, it seems that he had only spent 90 minutes away from his car. Even though Armando believed and felt that he had spent days on board the ship, the fact that he had only been gone for 90 minutes was also corroborated by him with the claim that he still arrived on time for the meeting with the business partner who he was en route to see. Apparently, Armando waited quite some time before relating this story to anyone, and decided that he must have just had a strange dream after accidentally falling asleep once he pulled over. It wasn't until 15 years later, in the year of 1969, when he was driving along a road near Mexico City and pulled over to pick up a hitchhiker who strangely looked like a typical Norwegian human. The man was tall, fit, blonde-haired, and had blue eyes. Upon seeing this man, Armando immediately remembered everything that had happened to him, and he states that this hitchhiker eventually divulged to him that he was, in fact, a member of the crew of that very same craft that Armando had boarded back in 1954. Unfortunately, Armando has not stated anything more of this second encounter with the Norwegian alien being that he picked up in his car. It seems that the second meeting remains in secrecy, aside from Armando mentioning that it occurred and stating that the hitchhiker admitted that all these years later they were still watching him. The Manhattan Apartment Abduction, otherwise known as the Brooklyn Bridge Abduction, the story of Linda Napolitano. In 1989, there was a strange claim of alien abduction that has received quite a lot of attention, though it may be rather unknown to you. Linda Napolitano claims to have been repeatedly abducted by being beamed into a spaceship from a bedroom window in her Manhattan apartment. Linda alleges that on November 30th of 1989 at 3 a.m., she experienced her first alien abduction. Linda states that the aliens abducted her by beaming her out of her 12th floor window. She describes this as being pulled out of her room on a beam of blue light, which lifted her onto a reddish-orange spacecraft that then quickly sped off in the direction of the Brooklyn Bridge. One of the strangest details about this is that there are more than 20 unidentified witnesses and 2 bodyguards of an unsurprisingly unnamed world leader, all alleged to have witnessed this event. These bodyguards to the unnamed world leader claim that they saw Linda floating out of her 12th floor apartment window while accompanied by 3 aliens and going directly into a spacecraft. As the story becomes wilder and wilder, it is revealed through tapes, recordings, letters, and statements that this unnamed, high-profile international political figure also witnessed the abduction, as well as many other top officials, as this person and the guards were allegedly part of a group that were coming from a late-night flight to a military installation in New York's harbor. The 2 security agents are said to have become obsessed with Linda, which led to them spying on her, showing up at her apartment, and even allegedly kidnapping her out of fear for her safety and fear that she might herself be an alien. They later stated that they felt the need to communicate with Linda simply out of a need to maintain their own sanity and establish that what they had seen was real. One of these agents is said to have returned and kidnapped Linda a second time, and unfortunately may have been attempting to sexually assault her had the other agent not showed up and stopped him. This agent seemed to be in a state of deep emotional and mental trouble, and began to believe that he, his partner, and this world leader that they were protecting had all been abducted, along with Linda. The agent wrote a letter detailing events that occurred during one of these abductions. While under hypnosis, Linda appeared to recall some of the same details that were written in this letter, and can be seen on video after being awakened from hypnosis, reacting in what seems to be shock and surprise as this letter is then read to her. A puzzling piece surrounding this letter, however, is that the 2 agents and this international public figure all seem to have no issues recalling the contents of this letter when not under hypnosis. There are even claims made by one of these agents that he had experienced a lifetime of abductions, and that he had in fact been abducted with Linda many times prior to this, beginning from an early childhood age. And once again, strangely enough, while hypnotized, Linda claims to remember all of this too, even down to small intricacies of the story, such as the pet names that Linda and this agent called each other when they were on board the alien craft. Unfortunately, this story has recently been made into a documentary series by Netflix, so there is not a lot of information to be found outside of a book written by Bud Hopkins. The majority of information known about this abduction encounter can be found in the book and was obtained by Hopkins, who claims to have personally used hypnosis techniques to help Linda recover memories of this abduction. So much of the information in this story seems to be so esoteric and strange and completely out there that it's hard to believe any of this exists outside of some crazy 1990s daytime outrageous ratings television show like the Jerry Springer Show or something of that nature. Things seem to be so outlandish that it truly needs to be experienced, taken in by either reading or watching the documentary to even be believed. Though we wish we could give you more information about this, we felt that it was an important case to bring to your attention, and we would like to direct you to the book, which is called Witnessed: The True Story of the Brooklyn Bridge UFO Abductions. Or we would like to direct you towards the Netflix special, which is said to shine an unfavorable and more skeptical light onto this encounter. The name of that documentary is The Manhattan Alien Abduction. The Aerial School UFO Incident. September 16th, 1994. There was a UFO sighting outside Ruwa, Zimbabwe. It is alleged that 62 students at the aerial school between the ages of 6 and 12 years old claim that they saw one or more silver UFO spacecraft come down from the sky and land in a field nearby to their school. Some of these children claim that these creatures, who were dressed all in black, exited the UFO, approached them, and telepathically communicated with the children, giving them a warning regarding environmental urgencies, which frightened the children greatly. Ruwa is a very small agricultural village located roughly 15 miles southeast of the capital, which is Harare. When this incident occurred, Ruwa was barely even considered an actual town. The aerial school was an expensive private school, and most of the pupils there came from wealthy white families in Harare. Just a few days before the incident at the aerial school, there were allegedly quite a few reports of UFO sightings all throughout southern Africa. These reports included descriptions of a bright fireball being visible in the night sky. Quite a few of these witnesses described this fireball as a meteorological incident, assuming that it was a comet or a meteor. But, as we're seeing more and more, right at this moment in time, some people simply choose to believe the most sensationalized, outlandish, and absurd things, rather than what can be easily or scientifically explained, thus resulting in a lot of fear and focus on UFOs and aliens around Zimbabwe at this time. The news government, and military claim that this fireball that had been seen was easily explained as the re-entry of the Zenit 2 rocket from the Cosmos 2290 satellite launch. They say that the booster had become so hot that it broke up and scattered, peppering the skyline with molten hot pieces of metallic debris. However, while this was happening, Cynthia Hind, a UFO researcher, had recorded reports of different alien sightings, including one sighting that occurred in daylight, which was reported by a young boy and his mother, as well as having a truck driver report a sighting of alien beings moving about freely on a road in which he traveled. The sighting at the Ariel School occurred at approximately 10 a.m. on September 16th of 1994, while the children were outside during a break from their studies. For some reason, there were no adult staff outside at this time, monitoring the children, as they all happened to be inside at a mandatory meeting. When the students came back into the building, they reported to their teachers what they had seen, but their claims were quickly dismissed. It's estimated that this entire incident lasted only about 15 minutes. After the school day had ended, the children returned home and they reported what they had seen to their parents. This resulted in many of the parents showing up in person to the school the very next day to try and discuss what the children had claimed had happened. As the gossip, rumors, and news grew within the community, this alleged sighting found its way to ZBC radio and became much more widespread after that. On September 19th, Tim Leach, the British Broadcasting Company's correspondent for Zimbabwe, visited the school and filmed interviews with the pupils and the staff. It is alleged that the reports from the children unnerved Leach so greatly that he stated, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this." On September 20th of 1994, Cynthia Hind arrived to the school where she was able to conduct interviews with some of the children. During these interviews, she asked the children to draw pictures of what they had seen. And as Cynthia reported, most all of the children told the very same story. The children stated, according to their story, one or more silver objects, almost unanimously described as discs, appeared in the sky. They then descended, floating down upon a field full of brush and small trees that was located just outside of the school property. Though the stories were very much the same, there were some small variations. A composite of all the stories states that there were 1 to 4 creatures with big eyes that were all dressed in black who exited the craft and began to approach the children. All of the children that were interviewed report that some of the children ran, but some children, mostly the older pupils, stayed and watched the aliens approach. The children then stated that the creatures then began to telepathically communicate with them, sending them a warning about environmental concerns before ending the conversation, returning to the craft, and flying away. One 5th grader reported he was warned that something was going to happen, and also told that pollution must not be. Another student, an 11-year-old girl, stated that she thought they wanted people to know that they are actually causing harm to the world and that we should not get too technological. Another child stated that they were informed that the world would end because they are not doing their duty and taking care of the planet. The conversations with the children were guided as they were questioned over and over again. The adults who were interviewing them offered suggestions such as, The possibility of seeing an airplane or potentially a large piece of debris that had broken off from the Zenit 2 rocket. None of these children could be persuaded that they had potentially misinterpreted what they had seen. They all vehemently denied seeing a plane, and they disregarded the idea that this was a piece of scrap from a rocket. One interesting portion of this is that, due to the different cultural backgrounds of these children, there was some different interpretation of what they had actually seen. While the majority of the children believed that they had been visited by extraterrestrial beings, some of the children thought that these short little beings might have been the Tokoloshe, which were creatures from their cultural folklore. Many skeptics have gone on to describe this encounter as potentially mass hysteria or some sort of extremely well manufactured and played out prank. Some people claim that Hind interviewed the children in large groups where they could listen to each other's stories, agree and disagree, and then easily copy and mimic what they had just heard. Others say that the telepathic communication angle was not present in Hind's initial report, and that it was likely prompted after being interviewed by John Mack, a Harvard University professor of psychiatry and well-known environmentalist. Throughout the years, several of the children, who have grown quite a bit since this occurrence, maintained that what they had reported was true. One witness went on record to say that she feared that the creatures will return, and claims that she can sense when they have come back into the atmosphere. In 2016, Emily Trim, one of the students of the school, held an art exhibit showcasing her artwork, paintings that she had created, and describing them as manifestations of the messages that she received from the beings on that fateful day. In 2021, within a Barstool Sports interview, one of the pupils from the aerial school recounted that he saw a bright light come down from the sky and relayed the same information about the aliens that exited it. In 2023, during an interview for a documentary on alien encounters, one of the aerial students named Dallin claimed that he was behind this entire incident. He states that he told his closest classmates and some other students that a shiny rock in the distance was a UFO. According to Dallin, he didn't think that this would work, and was extremely surprised at how easily it caught on. Unfortunately, the claims that Dallin made in 2023 directly contradict claims that he made on camera 15 years prior to that documentary, in which he described the UFO as having a light that would flash a different color in the sky. Dallin's claims also contradict all of the other aerial school witnesses' testimonies within this documentary. Well, We hope that you're not upset with us leaving you with a little bit of a cliffhanger there at the end of both the Brooklyn Bridge abduction and the Ariel School incident. We feel like it just needs to be experienced through a different medium than having us relay all of the information to you. We wanted to see if we could possibly pique your interest and then send you off towards the information. We hope that you've enjoyed this installment. Please feel free to look up these cases, read about them, listen to others discuss the cases, or watch any video footage or reenactments that you can find. Happy hunting! We thank you again for spending your time with us. We hope that you're taking care of yourselves and taking care of each other. And we hope that you have sweet dreams.